Good evening, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of the Monsters Den. Boy, I haven't said it like that in a long time. In the
Old school.
going old school tonight. In the co-captain's chair, Mr. Jamie Laszlo. Howdy, my friend. How you doing?
Hi. How you doing, Pete?
Doing all right. Doing all right. And for those of you watching, yes, I am on vacation in Maine. So this is actually, this episode was recorded before I went away. So Jamie and I were talking and he was interested in coming back on the Monsters Den to do some cool stuff. And I said, well, perfect timing because I need some content for next week while I'm away, which is actually this week while you're watching it. So we put together a pretty quick little episode here. It's something that I've had on my to-do list for a long time. And since it's Halloween season and trying to keep in the spirit of things, vampire films. We all love them. We all have our favorites, but could you just whittle it down to 5? So that's what we have tasked ourselves with, is to look at all these great vampire films and pick out our top 5 favorites. I don't know about you, my man, but this was not easy.
Yeah, I had a lot coming in and out right up to showtime, but
yeah.
I stuck with my initial top 5, as lame as it is.
Well, I had a top 4 that I was pretty happy with, and I've been switching out my number 5, and up until like 2 seconds ago before we started doing this, I pull like 5 other discs, and I'm like, all right, I'll kind of wait and see, and I still don't know what my number 5 is going to be. But so I don't know. I may save that one for last because I just can't decide yet. So I'll have you start us off with your first pick, though.
All right. Well, I'm going as almost as old school as you can get. Despite its flaws, I gotta go with this one. I think you have this, Pete. You have that?
Oh yeah,
collection. Isn't it cool as hell?
It's amazing.
The only bad thing is that a lot of the discs, each disc has like Frankenstein, Wolfman, and all their movies. A lot of the movies overlap. Like you get Castle of Frankenstein on the Dracula one and on, but that's all right. There's still 30 in all. And a lot of these I haven't seen, like you know, the Invisible Agent and things like that. So I'm having a good time with this October.
And I will say those films have never looked better. However, they're coming out with 4K versions of some of them.
It's out. Yeah, with the 4 main ones. Yeah, and I heard a review on them and I hear they look fantastic.
Oh, these already look great. I'm like, oh God.
Wait until 8K comes out and you're buying everything again.
I have bought these films so many times. It's crazy. But anyway, back to Dracula.
All right. Yeah. Well, first of all, the first 20 minutes of this movie is my favorite 20 or 25 minutes of any Universal horror movie ever. So right there, boom. And the fact that there's no score actually works in the first half of this movie. Now, the second half suffers from not having a score.
Yeah.
And like a lot of those movies back then, it ends abruptly. But look, it's an iconic image of Dracula. It's the first image I think of when I think of Dracula. And they didn't need special effects. All they needed was a flashlight in the dude's eyes. Done. And it's iconic for 100 years and counting. Because all these actors had charisma back then. Yeah. Because they didn't have special effects, they relied on these actors to carry the film. Now, do you remember, what was it? 4 years ago, they tried to bring back this universe with The Mummy with Tom Cruise, and everything they should not have done, they did, and everything they did, they should not have done. And it's really depressing if you watch that movie because it was called The Dark Universe. It was going to be like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it opens with the Dark Universe logo. Like they really thought this was going to be something. And then go, oh, poor sons of bitches. What they should have done is they should have kept all those movies in the same time frame that these happened. They should not have made it modern in today's time. And I would not have been mad if they made them in black and white. I wouldn't have.
Been fine with it. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, just make it up-to-date technology, you know, use everything you got, but just make it as old school as possible. Give it atmosphere. Don't make it an action movie. Ugh. But yeah, I mean, despite all its flaws, I watch it every year because it has that charm. All these movies have a charm that you just can't capture anymore. So I'm going with Dracula as number 5.
Yeah. I'll talk about that more in a couple minutes, but I'm amazed at how quickly Universal just fucked up all the plans that it's not that hard. And the funny thing is, you talk to any old school fan of the Universal horror films, we were all looking forward to this new shared universe, this new thing they were going to do, and it's just amazing how at like every juncture they just screwed it up royally. It's not that difficult, but you know what it is? They're trying to satisfy modern day audiences and kids, and that therein lies the problem.
And make it a little bit like the Brandon Fraser mummy movies.
Yeah,
I guess. I don't know.
I thought they were on the right track with the Wolfman film that came out like 10 years ago or so.
That wasn't part of it, though.
It wasn't part of it, but I think that was more in line with what they needed to do. I think that film suffered because they did so many last minute rewrites and reshoots that the like part of the movie is like kind of like a jumbled mess, but they had the right idea because that had the gothic feel of the old school films. And I think that's why I really still enjoy that film, even though it's a little convoluted in spots, but I don't know. Yeah, man, it's depressing when you think about how they've got all this money and technology now that they really could do. Because, let's be real, and I don't need to take this off tangent, but some of those Universal horror films, as much as we love them, as great as they are, some of them are just a mess of like inconsistent storytelling from film to film. That's just like baffling. And it's like, you could have kind of like fixed all that shit now, with the new films, and really done some of those stories and some of those characters justice, where maybe back in the old days, they kind of screwed things up here and there, and they just did a worse job.
And they could have kept the feel and spirit of the old ones and made them almost quote unquote better. But they didn't.
Yeah, because those old films are not perfect. I mean, we love them because we grew up with them, and there's a charm to them, like you said, but they're not perfect by any means.
These movies in my top 5 are not perfect, but they're the ones I gravitate towards.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to get to some of the classics, but I also have enjoyed some more modern vampire films over the last 20, 30 years, especially this one quite a bit. This one strays very far away from Dracula, and whether you're talking Universal or Hammer, it's 30 Days of Night. I like this a lot. So this takes place, where is this? Out in Alaska. So this takes place in Alaska, where like a family of vampires settles into this tiny little town that's literally out in the middle of nowhere in Alaska. And the vampires know this. And they basically, their whole intent is to drop down into this town and create more vampires from everybody in the town, every living soul. And so basically this film takes place exactly what it says, 30 Days of Night. And it's hour by hour. And it's pretty chilling, pretty scary. These are really violent, scary vampires. This is not Bela Lugosi by any means. And you got Josh Hartnett and Melissa George play the two main characters. And it's basically, it's almost like, and then there were none. So one by one, the vampires are picking off all the people in the town. And you've got this little band of survivors trying to basically just last through this dark period. Because of course, in Alaska, you get 30 days of night, right? So the vampires have a month to wreak havoc before the sun starts to rise again at the end of the month. So really cool film. I think they did a sequel to this, which I don't think I ever saw. Didn't need one. Bleak film, bleak ending. It's sort of, the ending is sort of okay. And then you realize what's actually happening. You're like, oh, one of those kind of gut punches because you really love a main character. And yeah, I'll say no more. But the vampires are awesome in here. They're so just like nasty and just, dripping with giant teeth and blood. And they're fast, and they're just, yeah, I like it. I've always liked this. I saw this in the theaters, loved it. I've watched it tons of times since then. So that is my number 5.
And it's a great idea too.
I can
just imagine someone, it just hitting them. What if the vampires went where it's like dark for a month in Alaska? Why didn't no one ever think of this? And then
snow everywhere, and you can't go anywhere, right? You can't hide from them.
Yeah, that screenplay started writing itself, I bet.
Yeah, right there. Yep, exactly.
All right, I'm going with one that no one's going to predict, and this is why my list is lame. I went with the 1931 Dracula. to the 1979 Dracula.
Oh, Frank Langella. Yeah.
You know, I watched this as a kid.
Yeah,
Is it a perfect movie? No, but man, a lot of these movies we saw as a kid and they just stay with us. And you got Donald Pleasance as Dr. Seward. You got Laurence Olivier as Van Helsing. You know what? You would think, 1979, did they make Disco Dracula? No, it takes place in 1913. Now, in 1979, Love at First Bite came out too. Now that's your disco Dracula. It was a spoof though with George Hamilton. But anyways, the one weird thing they do in this movie, they kill Dracula in a different kind of way. Spoiler. But they switch Lucy and Mina, the characters. Lucy is Mina, Mina is Lucy, which confused me for like decades. Because as soon as I thought who was Lucy and who was Mina, I'd watch another Dracula movie and go, wait a minute. I thought it was switched. And then maybe a year and a half would go by and I watch this and go, wait a minute, what? I was wrong again. But it wasn't me, it was them. So Dracula is a little lonely in this movie. It's a little bit of a love story. In fact, when the wolves are howling, he says, listen to them, children of the night, what sad music they make, which is a little take on the original. And it's Lucy, who should be Mina, who likes the sound. But one of the scariest scenes I've ever seen is in this movie, believe it or not. I think we all have that scene, Pete, where you remember when we were a little kid, the first scene that really scared the bejesus out of us. And I don't know what movie it is for you, but for me, I remember watching this in my bedroom on my little TV on the floor, and my parents and grandparents were down the hall in the kitchen. And there's a scene where Dr. Seward, and Van Helsing go to Mina's grave, Mina, who should be Lucy, and she's not there. She went down into the mines underneath the grave. And so Laurence Olivier goes down there and he drops his crucifix, and Mina starts coming towards him. Come to me, Papa. Come to me. I'm looking like her, kind of. Come to me. And I went running down the hallway with chills all over my body, scared to death. And it still stays with me. And you know what? If you watch that scene today, you could see, yes, that is a frightening image. So that alone made me put it into my top 5. I got to talk about the color. When it was released, it was in pretty bright color. And I think on Laserdisc, it's the original version, but around 1991, the director wanted to take all the color out and make it almost black and white. It's kind of color, but it's very drab. And a lot of people complain about that. I kind of dig it because you're kind of getting a black and white Dracula, but it's kind of the best of both worlds. I just wish it was on Blu-ray. You could get both options.
Yeah.
That would be nice. And believe it or not, the original score is John Williams.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. I tell you what, one thing that, it's a solid score. I enjoy it. But man, he wrote so many like recurring themes, like Indiana Jones when he's on the vine, dun, 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 dun. The Imperial March, what's going to happen. Jaws. Dun, dun,
oh, yeah. Yep.
What if he would have done one for Dracula? That every time we hear that iconic theme, we think of Dracula. That's what's missing on this.
Yeah.
Drop the ball, John.
his excuse because I was too busy coming up with all these other great ones. I can't.
I read that he never knew much about vampires or Dracula when he wrote.
Oh, really? Well, that could be then. Yeah.
I read that, I think. Now, don't quote me on that, guys. I think I read that.
Yeah, that's a good one. I haven't seen that version of Dracula in a long, long time. And I think that was a cool return of Dracula as kind of like the suave, the sexy vampire, because Christopher Lee was definitely not that. Christopher Lee was menacing and totally different than Lugosi. So
James Bond, if James Bond was a vampire.
Right, yeah.
And there's actually a scene where he starts kissing Lucy, not Mina, should be Mina, or is it Mina? Yeah, Lucy. And it almost a James, that's where the color comes all of a sudden, this big red sun and their silhouettes, and it looks like the opening to a James Bond movie with the silhouettes and everything.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I need to see that again. It's been a long time. I haven't watched that in many years. I think I have figured out what my number 5 is going to be now, and I'll throw it in now at number 4. And it's actually not one of the ones I grabbed. Of course,
on the fly, making decisions.
Yeah. Well, because it was like a tie between like a whole bunch of them, and then I kind of forgot about this one. I was thinking about it earlier today, and now I just happened to peek over at my list. I'm like, oh, that's got to be it. So my choice for number 5 or number 4 or whatever is. It's a great vampire film. It's also sort of one of those great horror comedies, sort of. And it was one of the strongest films of the 80s in this kind of genre, and one you can watch over and over and over again. Fright Night, starring Chris Sarandon and the great Roddy McDowall. And
I thought you were going to say Dead and Loving It. I think that was 90s.
But yeah, I've always liked Fright Night, but I think I've grown to appreciate it even more in recent years. And I think it's just what I like about it is it takes the whole, the vampire lore, and it's like, well, you never know who could move in next door to you, right? Could be a vampire, could be anybody. And I think Roddy McDowall plays such a great character in that film. The kids are great too, but Roddy is so good because he basically plays like the Van Helsing character, but he's a fake, right? He plays it on a TV show, and then all the kids think that that's really what he does. So they actually go and they get his help to go combat the vampire who moves next door. And of course, it's kind of like the wolf in sheep's clothes, right? So the kid who lives next door knows his neighbor is a vampire, but he's trying to tell everybody, nobody would believe him, right? And here, once again, you've got the vampire played by Chris Sarandon, who kind of portrays that kind of suave, debonair, the sexy guy living next door, and he's not a good dude at all. And then you've got the main character, his best friend, who's that real creepy young dude, I forget his name, and then he gets turned into a vampire, and he's got the big humongous teeth that are bigger than his whole head. It's just so comical in spots, but a really, really good film and a lot of fun. It's got some good comedic moments. It's got enough horror elements, and I think from its time period, I think it kind of fits alongside a film like Lost Boys. They're both kind of, to me, similar in a way where they give justice to the whole vampire, legend, but inject a lot of that kind of the 80s fun that we saw in a lot of horror films in that time period. So yeah, Fright Night for me, number 4, I guess.
You got a little bit of disco Dracula in that movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep.
It almost made my list. Yes. But you know what? I watched it somewhat recently. Forgot how long they draw out that fight at the end. It seems to just go on forever. I'm like, man, I don't remember that. So I didn't like it as much, but I still liked it. And then I recently watched the 79 Dracula, and I think I liked it even a little bit more. And that
a little bit more, yeah.
Deciding factor.
Yep.
So yeah, and you know what? The remake, 2011 remake of Fright Night, not awful.
Never saw it.
It's not awful. I mean, when they do too many remakes, and I get it, and they're forgotten about 2 years after they make them. But that one, it was all right.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I don't know. I'm really weird when it comes to remakes, especially remakes of films that, aren't that old yet. I mean, I know a lot of people say, well, it's 30 years, 35 years, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If the movie was made when I had pubes, it doesn't need to be remade now.
I agree.
I agree. My number 3 is a comedy and a little bit outside the box. I don't have any props. I don't own the soundtrack. I don't own it on Blu-ray, but I do need it on Blu-ray, but it's a little pricey. What We Do in the Shadows from 2014. I don't know if you know much about this movie or the TV show. So you never heard of this movie?
No.
Okay.
That's
so
something totally off the beaten path for me. So yeah.
Well, you got this guy who's making a name for himself in Hollywood right now. Taika Waititi. He directed Thor Ragnarok.
Okay.
And if he can make Thor funny, he can make vampires funny. Trust me. He's doing the next Thor movie. He did Jojo Rabbit, I believe. He's got a quirky sense of humor, the guy. But this movie is 4 vampires living in a house, and it's set up kind of like The Office or Modern Family, where it's a fake documentary. The cameramen that you don't see are wearing crucifixes that keep them safe from the vampires that they're doing a documentary about. And the vampires swore they won't eat them. One of the vampires is like a Nosferatu type. His name is Peter, and all the other vampires are scared of him and intimidated by him. But this is this guy, Taika Waititi. This is his. This is how he makes things funny. All right. This is his strategy. He takes uncommon characters and puts them in common situations. He makes them say everyday things and have everyday arguments. Like Thor. Half the male population sits around and watches, plays video games, all right, and gets fat. Nothing's funny about it. Make Thor do that, and it's hilarious.
True. That's very true.
These vampires, they argue about who's doing the dishes, and there's blood all over the dishes, and how they're paying the rent. They go downstairs to talk to Peter, the scary vampire, and he's got bones all over the place, and they try giving him a broom and hinting maybe he should clean up the area a little bit. That's funny. Vampires doing everyday things, having everyday arguments. And of course, their enemies are the werewolves. And the leader of the werewolves, he doesn't let anyone swear in his pack, because, quote unquote, we're werewolves, we're not swearwolves.
Makes sense.
And you get to learn a little something about vampires. Why do they prefer virgin blood? Well, one of the vampires says, if you were going to eat a sandwich, you'd prefer it if someone didn't fuck it first. Makes perfect sense to me. Pete, this movie is hilarious. They attack a guy and turn him into a vampire, and they take him into the house, and his name is Nick, and Nick turns out to be a bit of a dick, and they don't know how to do it. He's so proud. He goes out and about, I'm a vampire, and he gets drunk and hits on chicks. I'm a vampire. They're like, gotta keep it on the DL, man. But it in this TV show that's on FX, it's in its 3rd season, is funnier than the movie. I swear to God, it is so hilarious.
But what came first, the TV show or the movie?
The movie.
Okay.
This movie is the MASH of vampire movies, because MASH came out, and then came out a great, hilarious TV show. Yeah. This movie came out and spawned a great, hilarious TV show based on it. So when I saw I think it was the first episode, I loved the movie. I went, are they going to screw it up? And one of the vampires is having a party, and he buys crepe paper. That's how you say it, right? That you hang up?
Yeah.
Crepe paper, yeah. But he calls it creepy paper. I bought creepy paper for our party. He's all excited because it's creepy. I was like, this show is going to be good.
I wonder if that film is, I wonder if that's on Shudder, or like where I could actually go try and watch.
It's not on Shudder.
Oh.
It is like $2.99, $3.99 rent on Amazon or whatever, Amazon Prime. It's an hour and a half too. Bang it out. It's hilarious.
Okay. No, I'm gonna seek that out. That looks like fun.
Yeah.
I'm all for a fun vampire film. So all right. Yeah, I gotta slot Bella, one of my favorite actors of all time, and number 3. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not perfect by any means, and I agree with you 100% that the first like 15-20 minutes of the film is amazing, and it kind of drops off quickly from there. And I have always thought that the lack of a powerful score in this film didn't do it any justice, because most of the other Universal classics have that, and it elevates everything. And yeah, once they kind of leave Transylvania, this film, when they all show up at the state and back in the States, it's kind of like it loses something that the first part of the film has. But I still think it's a great performance by Lugosi and the whole cast, really. And he's just, there's a lack of menace in this film, I think, from a certain point in the movie all the way to the end that I think it's missing. But I love, the scene with Lugosi and Edward Van Sloan, that whole like kind of back and forth that they have, that's classic. And that to me is probably the best part of the latter part of the film. But yeah, it's just a shame that they didn't let Lugosi play this character again in some of the follow-up films that happened right away. He had to go to another studio to play a vampire. They couldn't call it Dracula. That's kind of a shame. I think what happened to him, if you know any of the backstory of his life, it really was a shame what he went through after the success of this film. It's, Universal really kind of screwed him over, and so did most of Hollywood actually. But yeah, this is a classic. I don't rate this film as high as like Frankenstein or the Wolfman, or even like some of the subsequent Frankenstein films, or just because even The Mummy I think is a better made film than this, although I have my issues with The Mummy as well. But it's classic, it's legendary, and I think it's one of the most important vampire films of all time. But ironically, a film that came out before this is actually much more successful, portraying this legendary horror icon. But we'll get to that in a couple minutes.
I was thinking about that one too in my list.
Yep.
How can you not? But in my next one, they do use elements to that movie in this one. And this is why my list is lame. I did 2 Dracula movies. I'm going to do a third. And this is the soundtrack. I got the soundtrack to this one and that one. I do not own the soundtrack to the Bela Lugosi one because there isn't one.
There isn't any. Yeah.
It would just, the needle would just go right to the end. I love this movie quite a bit. This is the first movie I ever went to try to see when it first came out that was sold out.
Like, oh, really?
Sold out. I didn't know movies sell out.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a humongous line I remember for this. Everyone had high expectations for this. Let me put that down. And this soundtrack is amazing, Pete. Amazing. It hinders on almost prog rock. If sometimes you listen to, now that we're doing album homework assignment, sometimes you think, if I ever did it with so and so, what would I give them? You're just thinking to yourself. And I thought of you, if I ever did it with Pete, maybe I would give him that Dracula soundtrack. But that's not a real album. I'd give him a real album. But I did think about that. It starts off with like an origin story of Dracula. But what it is, it's kind of like giving you the origin of Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah.
Which is what Dracula was based on. Like he was the real Dracula. So they kind of combine fact and fiction in this movie all of a sudden. You got to love that take. And there's a vampire book that's being looked at halfway through the movie, and it's the famous picture of Vlad the Impaler in it. So yeah, I learned he was the real Dracula when I was a little kid playing with my 2XL. Remember 2XL? He asked you questions with the 8-track.
Yep, I do. Yep.
Yeah, but Gary Oldman, second best Dracula in film history, if you ask me. Some people might disagree. You got Anthony Hopkins, great as Van Helsing. He plays it so straight that it's funny, some of the things he says. No, I'm just going to cut off her head and cut out her heart. What? I'm not going to do an autopsy. Just cut off her head.
None needed.
The good news that they're so great is we get the benefit from it. The bad news is Keanu Reeves. He looks even worse compared to their great performances. When this came out, he got a lot of slack for that. I recently watched it, and yes, he is horrible in this movie.
Yeah, to his defense, it was pretty early in his career. So
it was early, yes. His accent is awful. But this is what I find fascinating. There aren't a lot of movies out there that people remember because of one of the actors or actresses being awful in it. When you think of Bram Stoker's Dracula, you think, oh, Keanu Reeves was awful. One of the first things. And this is Francis Ford Coppola now.
Yeah.
2 years prior to this, he did Godfather 3. And what's the first thing you think of when you think of Godfather 3? Sofia Coppola. Awful performance. So he did 2 in a row. which is fascinating. So Tom Waits, he plays Renfield. I think it's the best Renfield ever. I don't get Tom Waits' music at all. I never did. I've tried. It's not for me, but I think he is absolutely great in this movie. I think the second best Renfield is the Spanish guy in the 1931 movie.
Oh,
Even though it's so over the top, I love it.
So you're not a Dwight Fry fan, I take it.
But some albums, musical albums, people say that's a musician's album, like a Dream Theater, Frank Zappa, or Steve Vai. Musicians will go towards that album. I think this is a filmmaker's movie with all the techniques and everything. Yeah. Those shadows are the best thing in this movie.
It's a pretty beautifully shot film.
It's all in camera, all the special effects, except for the weird blue flame that you see every once in a while. I think like twice. Other than that, everything is in camera, projections, everything like that. And so makes the movie hold up in our time 30 years later, because you don't have dated CGI at all.
Right.
So you got to keep it real. And the soundtrack I talked about. So there you go. Number 2. I don't know what you think about that movie.
I enjoy it quite a bit. I watched it not long ago, actually, and looks great on Blu-ray, by the way. Good performances all around. I like that it's a little bit different. Like you mentioned, they really try to hit home on the historical part of, Vlad and, Dracula, right? And I like that Gary Oldman did something a little bit different with the character. I like his transformations at various points in the film. I thought that was really cool. And, how you see him really young and suave and debonair, and then he's all old and withered, and then he turns into this big bat creature. I thought that was really well done. And I'm a sucker for old school creature effects and prosthetics and makeup and costumes and all that kind of stuff.
They're good in this.
They're really good, yeah. And
when he's a wolf,
yeah,
it looks great. And at the end, when he's a big bat,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's great when he backs up into a corner and you just see the eyes, and then he turns into rats, and the rats. There are so many tricks to just keep it. It flows. That movie just flows.
Yeah, it does. It does. And the cast for the most part is really good. I think we haven't mentioned Winona Ryder. I think she's excellent.
Yeah, she's decent.
She really fits the role good.
And she's in her prime. Early 90s hotness.
Yes.
I loved her back.
The long hair and everything. Yep. And they added there was a really big erotic kind of feel throughout the whole movie. I think a real and not just coming from the lead character, right? You had all the female vampires, his bride, and so on. And that was, I think, a little different, right? So yeah, all in all, really good. I mean, I liked it a lot when it came out. I saw it in the theaters when it came out. I've watched it numerous times. Like I said, we watched it not that long ago. So yeah, good stuff.
Female vampires, they are so hot and so frightening at the same time.
At the same time.
Every time, the guy you see going like this, I'm like, don't do that. Oh, wait a minute. Would I? I might.
That's a good choice. That's on my longer list too. I like that quite a bit. All right. What are we at now? 2?
Yeah, we're moving along.
All right. So F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu. I hinted at it before. This is probably for me the most frightening silent movie I've ever seen.
Oh,
and not just, I wouldn't even say just silent movie. This is a frightening film. I remember why I've seen this movie countless times, too many to even count in my life. But the crazy thing is, I was watching this movie on channel 13 PBS back when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, and it scared the shit out of me back then, and it still scares me. There are scenes in this movie like right here where Max Schreck, who plays the vampire, is going up the stairs. All you really see is his shadow, and he's straight as anything, and he barely, there's barely any movement. The scene where you've got he's not Renfield, but David I'm drawing a blank on the name of the character. Anyway, the guy who comes to the castle to visit him, it's not Renfield in this film. It's the other character who is the fiance of Mina,
right.
whatever his name is. He's at the castle and he's like locked in his room after they've had dinner, and it's in the middle of the night, and he's like, things are really creepy, and all of a sudden his door just opens and there's Max Schreck playing the vampire standing right there, and he just like slowly just kind of falls into the room, and it's so creepy. So
the opposite of this look.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just look
There's
at
nothing sexy there.
Long ass nails. He's
Nothing
bald.
sexy.
He's got the big ears. I mean, it's kind of almost, by today's standards, it's almost kind of comical, but this was some frightening shit way back.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to the story in Dracula and in Horror of Dracula, and they don't really change the whole thing up too much, but it's got chilling music and it was really well shot, great use of shadows, and most of it is filmed at night, and it's just brilliant filmmaking. One of the great German silent horror classics of all time, and I love it. I can watch this all the time, never tire of it. I mean, it's barely over an hour, right? So it's like,
right.
I urge anybody who thinks that silent movies are boring and old school, man, go watch Nosferatu. It's so good.
Yes,
so
there are plenty of good silent movies.
Yeah,
and 100 years later, that still might be the scariest looking vampire ever.
Yeah, and its simplicity, it's great. Yeah, I mean, just giant claws and beady eyes and those ears, and yeah, awesome.
A movie on my honorable mention is Shadow of a Vampire, which takes the idea of that movie and adds a big twist to it. And I think the idea of that movie is fantastic. The execution is okay, but the idea, oh my God, what if he was a real vampire?
No, it has its moment. That film has its moments.
It does have its moments. Yes, It's on my honorable mentions. But number one, do you remember when we did a video with Mike Portnoy and he changed T-shirts like 57,000 times?
Yes.
Well, one T-shirt, because I get to talk about one of my top 5 movies of all time.
Cool.
When you said, do you want to do vampires? The first thing I thought of was, I get to talk about this movie. Nice. So let's do it. One of my favorite movies of all time. I got the soundtrack here on blood splattered vinyl. There you go. I need the Blu-ray. I do have my original VHS and DVD from Dusk Till Dawn. When I saw this in the theater in 1996, being so excited, it was something about the trailer, man, that I just knew this was going to rock. And I read an interview with Tarantino in Rolling Stone magazine, and he was talking about it. I'm like, this is going to be great. When opening night, and it's the most fun I ever had in the theater as an adult. I'm not going to count as a kid seeing Star Wars for the first time. I remember when it was over, I felt like a bar. You know, the bars, you get the safety bars in a roller coaster. I felt one should have went, because I felt like I was on a roller coaster ride that whole movie, man. I don't know, there's probably a lot of people who haven't seen it. It's 1996. It's 2 movies in one. The first half of the movie is your basic Tarantino crime movie. And then the second half, we get a little intermission with Salma Hayek dancing. And that's your intermission. But you do not want to use the bathroom or catch a smoke during that intermission. No, you do not. Stay for that. And then it turns into a vampire movie for the second half. And there are people that complain about that. I've heard people complain, well, I hate it when it turns to the vampires. Or I've heard people say they like the vampire part. I like both equally because I love the characters in this movie. And they don't get along in the beginning, in the first half. And when they have a common enemy of the vampires, they start getting along. I love how they start drinking together and they start getting along and everything. But so I quote this movie quite a bit, Pete, in my daily life. I quote like Star Wars all the time. And, just for stupid reasons. There are quotes in this movie I use all the time. one of my favorite quotes is Seth, played by George Clooney, says, I might be an asshole, but I'm not a fucking asshole, which I totally understand. I've been a regular asshole my whole life, making sure I don't cross the line of being, I do cross the line sometimes, and I have, and I paid the price, but it doesn't happen.
There's different grades of assholeness, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Even the best tightrope walker falls every once in a while. Sex Machine. When I got a long list of things to do that I don't want to do, and I finally get to the last thing, I'll sometimes say, now let's kill that fucking band, because they kill all the vampires and the last thing left is the band. Sex Machine. And Sex Machine, he has a gun in his crotch that comes up, and he's got 2 bullet rounds that look like testicles. I mean, there are things in this movie that are just great, funny ideas.
Yeah.
And then you got Michael Parks, who's a great character actor in the beginning of this movie. He plays a ranger. And when I'm having a miserable day, I will try to quote him in my mind as best as I can. But he walks into the gas station and talks to the guy behind the counter. What's his name? I forget. Benny. I think Benny. He tells him, let me read it so I get it right. Well, it's been one long goddamn hot, miserable shit ass fucking day every inch of the way. When I have a bad day, man, I walk into this house. That's the first thing I think of. I don't get it all right in my head.
Well, that's a long list of expletives you got to fit in there.
Yes,
right?
And then I think Benny, I think it's his name, is like eating a burrito, and he says, "Oh, don't you know that'll kill you faster than a bullet? And the food's no good except for hippies," or something like that. It's great. Everything about this movie is great. Pete, it's like Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez, who directed it, had to sit down with me. And they said, Laszlo, what do you want in this movie that we're going to do? And I said, all right, first of all, we got to have an anti-hero who's hilarious and says one-liners out the butt. Give him like a pain in the ass brother where they can like butt heads. Check. Done, Laszlo. Yep. Can we have some drinking? I like drinking in a bar, maybe. Done. We'll throw that in there. How about some hot topless Mexican chicks? We could do that. Can you make one of them Selma Hayek? Well, Selma won't get topless, but she'll dance in a bikini with a big fat snake. Close enough. Good. And on top of all that, guys, I know this is going to be crazy. Can you throw in some vampires?
Lots
Done,
of vampires.
Laszlo.
Lots of vampires.
They went on my checklist. They made this movie for me. And when it came out on VHS, remember Blockbuster?
Mm-hmm.
I went to my local Blockbuster and I ran in there and I said, it just came out. So I said, do you have any extra promotional posters for From Dusk Till Dawn? And I said, no, dude, we don't have any. And I said, all right, it's worth a try. And I remember walking back into my car, a Festiva, a little Ford Festiva.
I remember
people used to say, Laszlo, where's your other roller skate? So I remember going in there and then I saw a dude running towards me from the store, one of the employees. He said, we found one for you. Like, oh, nice. That was 1996, 25 years ago.
Still got it.
Still got it in the frame up here on the wall in the bar.
It's in great condition. Look at that.
Oh, there's a big fat rip here you can't see.
Oh, yeah. No, I can't see it. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's all right. It's not worth money in mint or anything.
Well, it's worth something to you. It's
worth a lot to me. That was Sterling, Virginia. Thank God that guy gave it to me. So, all right, From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah,
and the soundtrack is great, Pete.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
got like ZZ Top on it, Sierra Ray Vaughan.
Yeah, that movie's a blast. That is another perfect example of, there've been a lot of really great like kind of horror comedies in the last 30, 35 years. That's one of them. And it's so witty. And the performances are great. And I agree with you that it's got a cast that you really like a lot. Like Harvey Keitel, great in this film. Juliette Lewis, great in this film. Tarantino himself, he's such a goofball. I love when he shows up in these films.
I love him in this movie.
Yeah, he's
creative ways of killing vampires.
Yeah,
holy water in a water pistol, or a bow and arrow where they put a cross at the end of each arrow, and the dad who's a priest has to bless them, and and they take the heart out of one of them and the heart's beating it, and they get a pencil, which is a wooden stake, and stick it in. So it's just creative ways. A table turned upside down with 4 legs. Each one's a wooden stake for a vampire.
Yep. Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good gore in it. You got Tom Savini's in it. Who's, I love Tom, and I love how, he's such an important part of horror makeup history, but he also guest stars in a lot of these films. You see him from time to time.
And who's the guy who played Machete?
That's geez, I'm drawing Danny Trejo.
Yes, he's the bartender.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Titty Twister. Another quote I like to say every once in a while.
Yeah, it's good. And I love the fact that it basically, the whole film takes place in this one setting, right? Which also is pretty neat, I think. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I like it a lot. It's a good choice. Very well made, good gore, good makeup effects, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of fun. All right. So much like you knew automatically when we discussed we were going to do this, that was going to be your number one film. Same with me. My number one film couldn't have been anything else. It's a classic. I've talked about it a lot on this channel, on this show, but you put Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing together. Horror of Dracula is, for me, the greatest vampire film of all time. This is menacing, scary, violent Count Dracula at his very best. And Christopher Lee would go and reprise this role numerous times for Hammer horror films, Hammer Productions over the years, but his first is still the best. And there's just something about Count Dracula, Christopher Lee going against Professor Van Helsing, Peter Cushing. It just works. It really works. And I think this really succeeds on a lot of levels where this kind of stumbles a little bit. This has the iconic actor playing the role, for the first time in a talkie film. But this is where I think the whole gothic nature of this tale, I think, really works well. Like I said, I've talked about this many, many times. Great ending. You finally get to see a Dracula film where there's blood and there's fangs, and it's violent. It's just awesome. So yeah, that is my favorite vampire film of all time.
Well, we covered, I think, the best Dracula movies between both of us.
Yeah. Dracula, but there are a lot
Dracula,
of
not vampire, Dracula.
Yeah, yes. There's others. So I don't know. You want to rattle off some mentions?
I just want to rattle off real fast. Let the Right One In. The remake, good. Let Me In.
Yep.
Fright Night, like you said. Near Dark, pretty good. Shadow of the Vampire, I said. Yep. This is kind of guilty pleasure. I like the Underworld franchise.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
I like him. I like the one, Curse of the Werewolf, or what's the one with the werewolves? Like the third one, I think, is the best one.
Oh, that is Rise of the Lichens. That's amazing.
Yes, Rise of the Lichens. Yes, that's the best one, I think.
Yeah.
That and the first one. I do like, if I was going to count this, I'd probably put it at 3, but I didn't count it because it's not a true vampire movie. But Nicolas Cage in Vampire's Kiss, he thinks he's a vampire and he wears plastic veins and he sleeps in an upside down couch. It's hilarious. I love that movie to death, but it's not really a true vampire movie, so I didn't put it in. And one last thing I just want to throw out there. Netflix has on a mini series right now called Midnight Mass, where it's a priest who's a vampire, and it takes place on a small island, where no one can get off as the movie goes on. And so they're all kind of on this island. Nobody really has a car. Everybody's in walking distance. Everybody knows each other. It's a universe where people don't know what vampires are. Nobody uses the word vampire. Nobody goes, oh, we need holy water. Nobody knows the lore. And it's kind of like a what if. And they think the main vampire is an angel from heaven and not a vampire. And he's giving eternal life. And you'd be amazed how they take passages from the Bible and put them into vampire lore, and it works. And you understand why all these Christian people think that this is a gift from God, being a vampire. It's amazing. It's really good. There's a couple flaws here and there, like why wouldn't you ask? But I mean, for being 8 hours long, it's good.
Good stuff. Sounds wacky.
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Let's see, what do I got? I'm also going to throw Underworld out here too, because I enjoyed those quite a bit. For me, my favorite film is Rise of the Lycans, which is the third one. But
Yes.
the reason why that's my favorite of the series is because I'm such a huge werewolf fan, and that is the most werewolf centric of all of them. For me, I think the one that's the best, mostly vampire film, is the second one, which is Evolution. That's the one that's got that killer chase scene with the one lead vampire guy who turns into like the bat creature and follows them around the mountain while they're driving in the truck, in the pickup truck. Great sequence. And I think for me, the second film has more vampires than any of the others, whereas the first film is also, big on the introducing the battle between, the vampires and the Lichens. And then the third is more of the Lycan story. I think the second is the best vampire tale. After the third film, it goes downhill pretty quick. But yeah, I do like the Underworld series quite a bit.
I need to have a marathon with a box set's coming out, I think maybe in the next 2 weeks. I saw of all those movies.
Well, you can get this. I bought this for like $20 not long ago, and it has all 5 of them on it.
Oh, okay.
Unless it's coming out in 4K, which is possible, but this has got all 5. It's called Underworld: The Ultimate Collection. All 5 films.
Oh, okay. The one I saw was a big, thick box, almost like this.
Oh, really? Yeah, this is nice, slim
okay,
box.
yeah, cool.
Yeah, this is worth getting. I'm going to give a shout out because I do like the first 2 films quite a bit. The Blade series. I like the first 2 Blade films quite a bit. The first one is probably the best of all of them, but the second one is really good as well. This takes the Marvel Comics character of Blade, the vampire slayer, who's kind of like a half-breed. He's been bitten by a vampire, but he's can go out at night and all that kind of stuff. And he basically...
You have his first appearance?
Yes. Comics? Yes. Yeah. Tomb of Dracula number 10. I do. So that's honorable mention. From Dusk Till Dawn. It's another one. I like that quite a bit. What else is on my list here? I actually really like, I know some people hate it. I like John Carpenter's Vampires quite a bit. I think that's...
I was expecting more when I went to the theater.
Yeah, I thought the same thing back in the day. I have rewatched it in recent years, and that's actually, I like it better than I did back in the day. It's kind of really grown on me. Near Dark is another great one. 2 old Lugosi films, Mark of the Vampire and Return of the Vampire. I like both of those a lot. What else? Where is it?
Martin?
That's what I'm looking for, right here. George Romero's Martin. This is a very cool film. And again, kind of like what you were talking about with the Nicolas Cage film.
Yeah.
Is he really a vampire?
Yeah.
Don't know.
He's just a nut.
Yeah, he's just a nut who thinks he is, right? He does drink blood. Does he need to? I don't know, but it's just a really...
He has to cut them open with a blade to get...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a really weird, dark, creepy-ass film, but I like it because it's so offbeat and different. Another Hammer film, Brides of Dracula, which is in this collection I've got right here. Very notable for being basically the sequel to Horror of Dracula, but without Christopher Lee, because he was kind of fighting with Hammer about, contracts and things like that. So they did a follow-up film with another actor playing Dracula, and it's great. It's really good. So that's another one. And Blackula. Love Blackula.
I've never seen that.
Oh, you got to see it. That's good. Just sleazy exploitation, early 70s or blaxploitation. Yeah, it's great. Blackula's a lot of fun. And I think that's all I got. Count Yorga the Vampire is another good one. And yeah, I think that's... Oh, and Vampire Lovers. Got to throw that out there. That's one of the great kind of Hammer lesbian vampire films that is a must-see as well. So Ingrid Pitt, do I need to say more? So
cool.
So there we have it, everybody.
In the can.
All sorts of fun vampire films, 5 favorites, a bunch of good, cool honorable mentions. List your favorite vampire films in the comments below. And I want to thank everybody for watching this special edition of The Monsters Den while I'm technically in Maine. So this is just basically a figment of your imagination.
Pete, I want to tell the recording Pete that I hope the real you right now is having a blast on vacation up in Maine. Mail me a lobster.
There you go. Yeah. So this normally will probably air around 8 or 9 o'clock. So I am probably actually sitting in Maine right now, having a lobster roll and drinking a nice craft beer from one of them.
Hey, you want to freak you out? Let's give you a call.
Yes.
He'll freak out when he gets a call from himself. It's late, Pete.
I know it is. It is. So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. For Jamie, Laszlo, I'm Pete Pardo. Good night, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you real soon. Take care.